I sent John a hammer. It's on the wall.
It's on the wall?
Yep. I picked it up from a old flea market that they do at this state park. And so I found a guy who had, hard to tell from the distance, but it was very unique and old. And this guy was a retired contractor who had it from somebody else who was a contractor. So the hammer had to have been like 50 plus years old. It's interesting, bro, how things that were made long ago don't break. But anything you buy now, although your truck, I understand, has been having some troubles.
Man, it was heartbreaking. It's out, but I went with an older vehicle. So now I got a 1978 Mercedes, and I'm loving it. It was my first vehicle hand-me-down from my dad was a 1984 Mercedes Turbo Diesel 300. So now I got a 78 300 again, but it's a coupe. So two-door.
It's a two-door. What's interesting is a kid in my neighborhood when I was in high school had that diesel, that four-door Mercedes. It reminds me, because I know we're going to be doing some history. Not that this is like so old. Just going to charge up the computer here, but early days.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Rocky IV.
No, early days CrossFit Journal, which I haven't seen what's going on with CrossFit in a long time, but they would do these great videos. I don't even know if YouTube was out at the time, but they went and spent the day with K-Star, and K-Star had a Mercedes. And he's like, why we're driving in a Mercedes? And I can't remember who he was with, if it was that dude Savan, if it was Dave Castro. He's like, because we're gangsters.
Well, he's gonna flip when he sees my vehicle.
Yeah, he's gonna be peanut butter and jealous. Wasn't he just down with you guys a couple weeks ago?
With John. So they spent some time together. It was weekend, and I'm in lacrosse season, so I'm out and about weekends. Similar to you, man.
Yeah,
deep into the sports realm.
No free time, no life.
I love it. I can't get away from sport, and especially a sport that I do love.
True that, yo. True that.
All right.
So let's rock the house.
Yeah, man. Do it. Following our Louis Simmons episode, you reached out, and I wanted to take the opportunity to really dive into Iron Roots.
Oh, so did you watch them?
One or two on Play's platform.
That's a C minus. There's
I know you got
20 something episodes. You watched 24. Two of them?
Hey,
man, F this podcast.
Subscription, not for me. I'm cutting subscriptions back. In essence, and going back to what you comment on the hammer, like weak things break, and that was a Louis quote.
Yeah.
But we're seeing the evolution of strength and conditioning, especially from a coach's development perspective. Like strength and conditioning is now a major in college, which blows my mind. So you got all these individuals learning the fundamentals, the principles, and then getting sent into the workforce, whether it's personal training or coaching with teams in college or the private sector. And I met a lot of these folks, and I don't think they're prepared to coach. That's my personal opinion.
Yep, I'm with you.
I don't think they understand the depth of the industry. While it's still young, there's a lot of important pillars in place, and you're the perfect person, I thought, to have this conversation with, to really help young coaches or people that are just getting into the world of strength training to understand that there are some strong roots within this industry and some names that we got to discuss, important pillars.
Right. Do you think a lot of your listeners are that younger generation of coaches?
Hey, Power Athlete Nation. I need to take a few moments to thank our sponsor, Power Athlete Training Systems, for providing the best training programs on the universe, in the metaverse. Really, if this is the Matrix, and I'm pretty sure we're stuck in the Matrix, Neo and Morpheus are uploading Power Athlete Training Systems. I'm pretty sure they're doing Field Strong. What do you think, McQuilkin?
Oh, I agree. They are on a specific training program for what they need. And to find out what you need, listeners, head to powerathletehq.com/training and take our little survey to find the perfect training program for you.
So we have developed training programs specific for an archetype. You want to get jacked, we got Jack Street. If you're looking to foster and develop athleticism, we got Field Strong. You're looking to kick the door off of hinges and smash things and cut up and just be a fucking badass, we got Hammer. If your first experience in terms of lifting weights and getting used to a barbell using a basic linear progression with Bedrock, that's the right one for you. And if you have a few miles underneath your belt, maybe a few kids, Fortune 500 CEO, or maybe life's getting a little in the way, I want you to check out Grindstone. And if your job and your desire is to fucking wad your face off, I want you to go check out Johnny Wad. And if you want to stack on a little Johnny Bot on that and hit a little bodybuilding accessory, we got that too. So what we've done is we've created this amazing catalog of services, these training programs designed for archetypes, and every one of them fits a specific user. And you know what? If you want to find that user, go on. I want you to take the survey, and then I want you to click on and take our 7-day free trial and see which one is right for you. Best in class training. And
for less than $1 a day, you get it delivered straight to the mobile app Train Heroic.
Mm-hmm. And if you want to sign up for our newsletter, you can go to powerathletehq.com / newsletter. I want you to go to that, sign up for the newsletter where you can get more information, not only on training programs, get discounts on shop on the merch, and really just know what's going on within Power Athlete with the Academy and some of our other initiatives.
And the latest episodes of Power Athlete Radio.
Which is really the most important thing. Power Athlete Radio, the premier podcast in strength and conditioning, and your resource for the best information on training, nutrition, cars, maybe some movies. Banter. I mean, we've been on other fitness podcasts, and when it comes to banter, we can fucking out-banter anybody.
Yes. And if you're a big fan of Power Athlete Radio, don't forget to smash that subscribe button. Hit us with a 5-star review that we will read.
If you leave us an amazing 5-star review, we will read it on air. And believe me, I love reading the reviews, especially the 5-star ones, because it lets us know we're doing a good job.
And we got some very creative listeners out there.
We do. I mean, that's why there are people.
Yes. Throw your hat into the ring. Again, head to powerathletehq.com / training for all your training needs. Take a little survey, find out what you're training for. 7-day free trial on that program, and training for less than $1 a day.
Thanks for Power Athlete Radio for sponsoring this podcast. See ya.
Bye. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I get DMs all the time. So people reaching out and touching base, and then it's ever flowing. I had a 2019 presentation with the NSCA, and then NSCA, similar to Play, has an awesome catalog online app of just old lectures from years and all their conferences. And one of my 2019s, like, I don't know, for some reason it hit within the thing, and it became the most watched video of the year.
What was the topic?
Strength training novice athlete. Basically broke down our Bedrock program for listeners. It's on YouTube, but it was also on their not their Play app, their NSCA TV.
Yeah.
They shot me an email, most watched, and then I just get messages from young coaches talking about, hey, this is what I applied, and then this is the results I'm getting. So they're going through and applying the Bedrock program as described from a 45-minute lecture with some terrible jokes, and then they're having success.
I don't know. You were mentioning on the Play app, so Play sent me all the Iron Roots videos, and it's on my YouTube, so it's free. And you and I texted back and forth about the importance of not just knowing the history, but learning the history. So what it really does, Tex, is it allows you to go down the rabbit hole to really, be like an inch wide, a mile deep. And, you mentioned Louis, and there's different kind of levels of those who have learned from Louis. There's those that trained at Westside. So I never trained at Westside under Louis' tutelage and coaching, but I spent so much time on the phone with him before, the internet exploded. And I always say I got lucky when I learned about training because there wasn't so much information available. So in those early 2000s, I kept researching Russian wrestling training because the Russian wrestlers were dominating. Now, really, the Americans are quite the dominant force. And what's interesting is Russian coaches have come to America. But long story short, I was able to get on the phone with him every single week and have these deep conversations on a phone, a flip phone, a BlackBerry phone, a landline. And that's a big thing that's missing. And so people might watch a video or they might read an Instagram post, and then you're missing a lot of context. You're missing when and where it was applied. And those early conversations I had with Louis, and even, mistakes I made in training as a bodybuilder, I still utilize some of those bodybuilding methods because some of the bodybuilders or a lot of them actually from that kind of 60s and 70s, they were hybrid bodybuilders, meaning they were bodybuilders. They also competed in weightlifting or incorporated weightlifting, oftentimes powerlifting as well. Some of the bodybuilders from the 70s competed in the early World's Strongest Man of the late 70s. And so back in that kind of silver and golden era of bodybuilding, bodybuilders were strong. And then we got to that kind of mid 80s, 90s, where it started getting all this pump up work. Well, Louis mentions his early or his initial training partners were the magazines from Muscle Builder Power, which those were the original articles by Bill Peanuts West. And John mentions in the recent podcast with Louis talking about how his dad grew up in Culver City, and Louis lights up about it. And I'm sure John remembers this, but the first time I met John, I actually gave him a book that was gifted to me from Jim Wendler, who I know you guys had on recently. Now, Jim, there's a lot of stories here. I jump around a lot. It was gifted to Jim Wendler from Dr. Ken Leisner, who should also be somebody that these young coaches should learn from. This book was photocopies of all of the original Westside Barbell articles. So Jim gave it to me, and he's like, I knew you would love this. You could have this. I was like, are you serious, Jim? He gives it to me. It's on my desk. And I have one copy. It's like spiral bound. So I meet Johnny up at, I forget the name of the CrossFit, but it was in Connecticut. The guy who, it was, CrossFit football. It was first time meeting John. We had exchanged a lot of emails and text messages. It was my first time meeting Raf, who was like as serious as a heart attack up there. Like he was coaching. He was, when you don't know him, I was like, geez, this guy is crazy serious. So I gave it to John. And I'm not sure if he's like me, like a collector of all the books, or if he lost it, moving from California to Texas. But those early articles of the original Westside Barbell teach you a lot. And then Louis took that information, applied it while training himself, then starting to train others out of his garage. And those stories, what I think from a coaching perspective does is it teaches you how to maximize training before there were fancy machines. The original home gym of Bill Peanuts West, the original Westside Barbell, was a York isometric rack, which was very narrow. And so what they did is they cut it, spread them out so they could box squat inside. How did they box squat? They took a milk crate and framed it out with wood. And that they began doing box squats, floor press. Instead of, rack pulls, they elevated the deadlift bar under, pieces of wood. And if you look at the plates that Bill Peanuts West uses, you'll see Zuber's Hall of Fame plates, which really should be, and that's like all of these kind of names are people and topics I covered in Iron Roots. Now, speaking back to these young coaches who are messaging you saying, I'm utilizing Bedrock. This is how I'm training the novice athlete. I think to myself all the time, I have purchased everything that Louis ever put out. Back then it was VHS, then it became DVD. They have the Conjugate Club. Am I going to implement all of that when I'm predominantly training high school athletes? And even at the Division I level, predominantly, I will not. But it allows you to have this deep understanding of maybe what I can do when I have somebody who is advanced, or you can experiment on yourself. And you mentioned these kids getting an undergrad in strength and conditioning. I know out here, I think University of Delaware has it. And so,
yeah, big physical culture there. I knew they're one of the early ones.
yeah. Who else has it? Do you know?
Oh
Off the
man,
top of your head?
a lot of D3s, and then Texas State, University of Texas, Texas A&M. So we're pulling a lot of our interns from local regional here, and then kicking their butt into shape. So when they go into the workforce, they know what the hell they're doing.
Bro, I have a guy that's finishing his internship with me. He's doing great. When I reference him as Colin the intern, and I have struggled to get interns. I can't even get interns from my old undergrad, which is Kane University. And he was my professor, Dr. Anzel. He was a former professional football player, played with O.J. Simpson. So I remember being in college and watching on TV O.J. Simpson in the white truck. Dr. Anzel said, "I don't want to hear nothing about nothing." So Doc Anzel is a department chair up at Kane. And I remember a couple of years ago, he said, "Zach, I'm afraid to send you interns. We're afraid they won't survive." And Colin, who's interning for me now, what's interesting about these younger coaches is they might know how to train themselves, not even anything spectacular. And no offense to them, because I was once that level also, right? You all start at the bottom, but he didn't know how to, I think Brett and what you talk about, you guys really explain it the best, the art of coaching, being a chameleon, having a different personality for the different personalities of the athletes that you're training. He didn't know how to communicate with kids. He didn't have that coach's eye. He didn't understand the art of coaching. And so why does all the history matter? Because you're building essentially a big, you're building like all of this weaponry for yourself. So you have things and people and places to pull from. It essentially gives you more experience so that when you are coaching, and I also think that coaching is much harder today than it was pre-2010. And, John mentioned this speaking with Louis, looking at offensive linemen. He's like, it looks like they don't lift. Their arms don't fill the shirt sleeves. And when he said that, I'm thinking to myself, well, maybe the coaches today don't even implement any bodybuilding work, which if we look at Westside Barbell, that's the repetition method. You need to put muscle on. It's like a bigger car engine. So basically researching older coaches and older training methods, you're able to look at it and see this is what works. This is how it's refined today. Maybe XYZ would or would not work today. And it just gives you greater knowledge. My wife is constantly like, she's like, Zach, do you need another book? And I'm like, look, these books are not on Kindle. This is a 1980 book by Dan Gable. And I wanted to have it so bad because, back then Iowa was dominating. Iowa is almost at the top today. But see, now my understanding of optimal training versus maximal training, you could see how what he did, 10, 20, 40 years ago, it worked, but now it doesn't work today because the personality of the kids are different. Emotionally, if I'm not obsessed, I'm not going to be able to handle high volume training. So now if we look back at training methods, Louis sometimes mentions all these extra workouts. A lot of kids of today won't respond good to extra workouts. So I'm able to look at things he spoke about decades ago and look to apply it today. So what you're doing is when you're looking at information as a coach, what I think is important is not to blindly copy, but to look at it, to assess the information, and then apply context to it. For example, let's say I'm looking at, I don't know if you know Tony Villani, XPE Sports. They like very dominant with the combine. They're like crush the combine. It's Tony Villani and Matt Gates. I watch Tony's Instagram videos, YouTube videos, and I don't just blindly copy it. So if you look up XPE Sports, these guys are real sharp. I look at it and say, where can I apply this? Can I incorporate this as our warm-up segues into our speed and change of direction? Can I implement this with the large group of high school athletes when I'm outside on the field? Mm-hmm. Can I implement this for non-field athletes to develop leg power, even though I'm training a wrestling team or a swimmer? And that's where you have to be able to, as a coach, look at information, is to not blindly copy. Now, let me take the other end of the spectrum. There's a local wrestler, super successful. And he always says, I'm following the West Side method. And so when I watch him train, I see him doing max effort work. I see him doing dynamic effort. I see him doing repetition work with machines and dumbbells and things like that. And he thinks that's what Louis does, you know? And when I spoke with Louis 20 years ago, we spoke about early days MMA. Back then it was called NHB.
Oh yeah, I've watched some VHS tapes of those.
Yeah, it was called no holds barred fighting. And some of it was bare knuckle fighting. Some of the American guys would go to Brazil. Now, the guys that Louis was training back then became UFC champions. Kevin Randleman, who passed away some years ago, Mark Coleman. These guys were Ohio State wrestlers. Well, Louis didn't train them exactly the way you see the powerlifters training, max effort, dynamic repetition. He did a lot of full body training. He implemented a lot of special strength training for time. You know, John always mentioned seeing that track and field girl throwing the medicine ball at Westside. You know, in 2002 or 2003, Louis was talking to me about this group of high school wrestlers he was training. And he goes, yeah, I have them slamming a med ball for 5 minutes nonstop. So I'm like thinking to myself, well, we're not slamming, you know, sets of 10 or 15, this kind of like, you know, quote unquote, normal training. He started getting me to think differently. But if I just look at his Instagram and, you know, I'm reading max effort, Diane, you know, I'm getting this little piece of the puzzle. But he started telling me about how he would train Kevin Randleman, 10 minutes of dumbbell benching on the physio ball, because Kevin Randleman would, you know, experience muscular fatigue if he was like, you know, taken down, and then his arms and shoulders would fatigue. So he said, I attacked his weak point. So that would be, to me, considered the quote unquote West Side method, meaning he's applying, you know, specific to the need of the athlete. Whereas people who just kind of scratch the surface, they're looking at max effort, dynamic, and repetition method.
Yeah, and it's intelligent the way he did write those books, is so he provides that.
Yes.
But then emphasizing that you need to focus on the weak points, the limitations, and as Ruiz would call, the limiting factors. Big takeaway from my experience with RAF was it's finding what your athletes can't do, because that's what's going to cost them the games and competitions. And intelligent sport coaches, you know, they're seeing these weaknesses, they're doing the scouting reports, or when the going gets tough, they observe, make an adjustment to the game plan or the strategy for an individual, and then set their athlete free to attack. So it's that point, it's limiting factors, and we aim to express that the best we can and then fix it within our training programs, especially when we're communicating with our coaches. Our warm-up movements that we deliver in the training programs are attacking well-known limitations that we've found in our experience traveling the world, teaching coaches and working with athletes. But then our education, okay, this is the movement. Let's call it a dead bug or Spider-Man or pillar to plank press up or even a strict pull-up, this is the movement. Well, here's things we need to look for that identify limitations. Guess what your accessory work is? Specific to those limitations. Also, the warm-ups, the beauty, it's not only the assessment tool, it's also the corrective exercise.
Yeah. It's, I think a great coach, speaking about these younger coaches, they realize everything is an assessment. So you're talking about pull-ups. If I see somebody's knees lifting during the pull-ups or their back heavily arching, well, we're going to reverse engineer a proper pull-up. They're lacking trunk stability. So now I'm going to incorporate dead bugs and different kind of trunk stability and anti-rotation exercises. And here's the other thing that goes deeper is you're also assessing the personality of the athlete, which is something I've really been able to teach Colin, the intern, meaning if Louis would say this to me all the time. He's like, you wrestlers are crazy. You're eccentric. You're fucking crazy. And that's why he did crazy stuff with them, because they believed in it. And that made them feel better by doing something that was quote unquote not optimal or quote unquote not perfect. But you know what? They thrived under that. And by training quote unquote crazy, they felt better, which improved their performance. And you can't take that and apply it to somebody who's maybe not quote unquote crazy. So what I've been explaining to Colin, my intern, is you're assessing not just the physical, but the verbal, the nonverbal, and the personality trait. So sometimes we get middle school kids that are shy and scared and very nervous to be there. I go, a kid like that, you got to give him plenty of time to rest. You got to let him maybe create his own obstacle course instead of saying, you're going to go through these hurdles, 3 times, and then you're going to sprint and carry. That might work for a 7th grader who's been wrestling or playing lacrosse and football since he was a kid. But another kid who's maybe not had any contact with anybody in a like combative type sport, he's not going to be able to fall right in to something that's maybe more regimented or it feels intense. And so, speaking with Louis, he would adjust the training for the athlete. He even would say Chuck Vogelpohl trained too much, but Chuck was crazy. He wasn't going to be able to stop him from doing that amount of volume. And then when you speak about all that crazy volume, now you have to go the other direction. And you got to look at these early bodybuilders from the 60s and 70s, who I know you guys had, I listen to your podcast all the time. For people that don't know, you guys did a podcast. Didn't you podcast with Dorian Yates?
Not yet.
I'm thinking Marty Gallagher did with Dorian Yates, but you guys did the Shadow program. So I had Dorian Yates's VHS tape, Blood and Guts, but he was influenced by Mike Mentzer. So by learning the bodybuilders who influenced Dorian, Mike Mentzer, Arthur Jones, what did they do? One all-out set. Now, sometimes you have limited time, and maybe at the end of a training session, you have like 7 minutes. If you watch me coach, I might say, okay, you're going to get 1 max set of push-ups. Then you're going to, grab something, for curling, whether it's a barbell or dumbbell. And you're going to get as many, choose a weight that's like a hard, like 10 to 15 reps, 1 all out set. Then you're going to do 1 all out set of tricep push down, something that's going to be about 20 reps. You learn that, wow, there's this minimum effective dose where sometimes I could get away with doing 1 set to make it happen, or you're limited on time. And so not this season, but the previous year, when we had all that COVID stuff still going on, my school was half day. So I was training groups for about 30 minutes. Well, baseball would train with me on game day. And I would go through this, like, I know it's a weird time. It would take like 22 minutes, but I would do a lot of 3 sets of 5, 3 sets of 3. So it'd be like a jump, a pull up, maybe a trap bar deadlift, kettlebell clean, kettlebell row, lunge jump, like quick, short power work. Well, where did I come up with optimal training? Well, I think back to some of those early bodybuilders who were training on a low volume approach. And that's why you want to learn from more than just strength coaches. You want to learn from anybody in the strength muscle building game, because you're going to need those bits and pieces when you're training athletes. And I'd say the past 10, 15 years, you need more bodybuilding knowledge because athletes are showing up skinnier and weaker than ever before, including college athletes. And so you need to incorporate bodybuilding methods, and the bodybuilding methods from decades ago, that golden and silver era, that's where you want to learn from, because they were also focused on being strong. They didn't have they had drugs, they had, some basic steroids and maybe growth hormone, but in the 50s and 60s, they probably didn't have a whole lot. Yet we had bodybuilders benching 400, Reg Park benched 500 pounds. That dude was strong as hell. He's the originator of 5 sets of 5. And then Reg Park's 5 sets of 5 went to Bill Starr, strongest shall survive. And Bill learned that doing 3 to 5 sets of 3 to 5 reps worked great. But instead of telling the guys to do 3, he just said, it's easy for everybody to remember if we do a 5x5. But those 2 5x5 methods are slightly different. Reg Park had a different method than Bill Starr. And so as a coach, you want to learn that, not just the training model, but if you look at Bill Starr's book, he created that 5x5 as a circuit, because when he was coaching the football players, he had limited space and limited equipment. So it had to be done as a circuit.
And that's a beautiful point. And coaches need to understand that these gentlemen were working within their limitations to develop these methods that they apply to their athletes. So if you look at Westside, and then having gone to Westside and seeing the setup, and then seeing 40, 50 people training in there at once, it's organized in a way where this group is hitting bench this day, this group's hitting squat this day, this group's hitting deadlifts this day. And then there's a whole second room for accessory work where it's not as leveled up and intense, but dudes are still getting work done and helping each other out. Then Star's set up where he can apply his best practices to his team. So now if a coach goes into a high school gym with awesome setup like you got over there, Zach, okay, well, first, this is what I have. Well, let's begin here. I begin with a purpose. What do I want to accomplish? What does my team needs? What's the demands of their sport? Where are they currently? So check the demand of the sport, assess your athlete where they are currently. Then I go to practical. What do I have? How much time do I have? Okay, so I got equipment, time, different barriers that I need to assess. So now I'm going to write the program for my athlete's needs, demands of the sports, where they are, with the equipment and the time that I have. And then I need to check back in. So the beauty of Starr's book, we can read it, we can apply it, but then he leaves it up to us as individuals to now check back in. And the most important, prudence. Did this accomplish what we set it out to? So if 5 sets of 5s didn't work, what adjustments do I need to make? Is it more volume or is it less, like Starr talks about?
Right.
So,
or does it not get the job done? And now do I need to incorporate some high rep training? And who does, high reps? So now I might pull from another knowledge, or you're talking about this assessment, like, our technique doesn't look that great. Okay, I'm going to incorporate some Cal Dietz ISOs to learn positions, or we're not building the muscle. Well, 5x5 is now going to turn into the next 2 to 3 weeks. We'll do an eccentric phase of one exercise, and I'll pull. So I got a little Cal Dietz. I got a little strongest shall survive. Oh, we got a little bit of time to get some bodybuilding work. Okay, I'll pull some Dorian Yates one all-out set of curls and push-ups and tricep push-downs, or what's minimal effective dose. I'm trying to. Who's a coach that consistently talks about minimal effective dose? I'm trying to think? Do you have somebody on the top of your head, Tex? Minimum
Negative.
effective dose. I think about this. We have a kind of a slight hill outside of our weight room bubble. I'm like, at the end, I'll say you got to get at least 3 hill sprints. It takes you 7 seconds from bottom to top. Do we have 21 seconds today? Get at least 3 in, because I feel like if I get those 3 in, at least I hate using the word maintenance, but I don't like straying from those hill sprints. Jim Wendler often says they run year round, but they don't run a lot, so that by the time summer training begins, we're in shape. We're not getting destroyed from practice. And so you're just constantly assessing, constantly testing and experimenting and implementing. And that's why if you are a up and coming coach and you're like, your idol is, Mike Boyle, you need more, people to pull from. Mike Boyle, something he mentions a lot of great stuff, but he talks about filling the buckets. What bucket needs to be filled? So if you got a bunch of skinny teenagers, then the bucket that needs to be filled is building muscle. And I'm going to have to do a lot of sets of 10 to 15 reps. I'm going to have to get some volume in there. What if the bucket is we're not fast? Well, where's your athletic warm-up? Start incorporating an athletic warm-up. And then you were mentioning putting it in the coach's hands. Does the training flow for the equipment you have? Like Sornex just posted a video today of a high school weight room. And it's like, holy crap, that's a high school weight room.
Are they hiring?
Exactly. It is so amazing. And so sometimes you see what somebody's implementing. And, I'm not going to mention names. I love some of these coaches, but they are training like 4 athletes, 5 athletes. And I'm like, yeah, that shit ain't going to work, because I'm training 45 to 75 kids. So that fancy exercise, it's not going to flow. It's not going to work in a room that's packed with athletes. So I would say when I look at the high school that I coach at, my programming is definitely imperfect and slightly flawed. And guess what? I'm okay with that, because you know what else is imperfect? Competition. It doesn't go as planned. It's flawed, right? There's no absolutes. So I like having these imperfections and not having the fanciest equipment. And even at the highest levels, an Olympic athlete should also be prepared for imperfections. Who's the swimmer who Michael Phelps said his swim coach poked a hole in his goggles on purpose during practices, so he would learn to train. So he would train with imperfect conditions. So if he got to the Olympics and he forgot his swim trunks or his goggles or water got in there, he didn't have a breakdown.
Exactly.
And that's why imperfect training is crucial. So who would we relate imperfect training to? Have these kids read Dinosaur Training by Brooks Kubik, which was, printed in the late 90s? That book was like a throat punch to that quote unquote functional training movement, where it was like, oh, are you not on a physio ball? Are you not training on one leg? You're not functional. That book was like an us versus them. Now, who inspired Brooks Kubik? Look at Dr. Ken Leisner. I've got videos of him training. I believe it's Virginia Tech football. You see them carrying the practice dummies over those gymnastics crash mats. So when you're carrying something and walking through, they called it the swamp carry, because your legs would sink in. Well, check this out. My gymnastics coach in undergrad, we had to take a semester of gymnastics. Mr. Gonzalez, I still call him Mr. Gonzalez. He had us doing circuit training. It was a brutal class. He was an all-American wrestler and a gymnast. So he had us doing circuits for time that I still implement today. I took that class in the fall of 95. All right. That's I don't know how long ago that is, about 30 years ago. He had us doing plyo jumps on the crash mats. I remember thinking to myself, like, I'm getting destroyed here, yet I had just competed in bodybuilding. I could squat for 405. He had us doing plyometric push-ups, not just in place, but moving your whole body across the mat and then back up. We did hand walking on the parallel bars, which when I started training athletes, I would go to the local park because I was training them at my parents' garage. Guess what we did? Hand walking on the parallel bars. I was implementing stuff that Mr. Gonzalez taught me. Then by coming across Dr. Ken's information in Brooks Cubic, I started carrying stones, looking at early days World's Strongest Man from the late 70s and early 80s. They were not throwing medicine balls. They were throwing car tires. So guess what we started doing for power? Throwing car tires. Even think about this. The Rocky films can give strength coaches great ideas. He does plyometrics. He does sprints
on a beach.
He runs hills, runs through the mountains. He goes and trains at a junkyard. I remember hearing Nate Carr. There's a few Nate Carrs, wrestlers, but the Nate Carr Sr., he was an Olympian and a national champ. He said he had something like 8 brothers. He goes, so I went to the junkyard and got a car axle. I took it down into the basement, propped it up on milk crates. And he's like, I did my bench press on the floor using the car axle. What's that? Thick grip training. Even our friends at Sorinex, I spent a lot of time talking with Bert and Pops in the early days because Sorinex was, Pops, Bert, and one other employee. So when you called, you'd speak with Bert. And Bert, early days Sorinex, they had a VHS tape of Bert utilizing all of the Sorinex equipment, which was my first kind of like look at like equipment built by lifters who were athletes, not just lifters who were powerlifters. And I saw things like the landmine or the hurricane that they built.
Record, Bert was a walk-on thrower at University of South Carolina. So
correct.
Made his bones training hard and walking on to a D1 track and field team.
And now what about Pops' history? Pops grew up in Central/North Jersey. Where did Pops go as a kid? He took the train to York, Pennsylvania to see men like John Grimmick doing clean and press with over 300 pounds and then doing handstand push-ups, free. So Pops had a powerlifting/weightlifting background by watching the York Strength and Health picnics. He teaches that to Bert. And you see how all of the influences you're able to pull from. That's why, the way I word this is I say, you never want to like segregate yourself from a group. Like I'm only a kettlebell guy, or I'm only a conjugate guy. My phrase is, and I utilized this when they interviewed me for the high schools. They said, tell me about your philosophy. Are you a speed and agility guy? They didn't even know what to ask me. Are you a functional training guy? I said, I'm a whatever the kids need guy. And they were like, you saw them like move in and be like, oh, all right, what does that mean? And so I'm explaining to them that, most of the kids are going to be weak. They're going to have to get stronger. They're going to lack athleticism. So I'm going to have to incorporate a warm-up that builds athleticism. And I'm going to utilize free weights to build inter and intramuscular coordination. We're going to have to build muscle, which is going to require repetition training. Then I said, some of the kids are going to lack confidence. So I'm going to pay attention to every time they have even better technique or get one more rep on push-ups or their squats are deeper. I'm going to give them a compliment. Now, where did I learn that? I didn't learn that in strength and conditioning. I learned it as a teacher. I learned it as a teacher. A guidance counselor told me, because when I was student teaching, like I have Colin interning with me, I was working with various teachers. One guy just got out of the Marines. So he spent 20 years in the Marines. If kids did something wrong, he made them do push-ups. I never wanted to punish kids with exercise. I felt like the punishment is you don't get to play. exercise is the gift. So I learned from that. I learned from another teacher. His name was Bill Cantra. Bill said, Zach, don't just walk around. He said, when you walk by a kid, you say, whoa, great job. Look at that. I like how you're able to balance on your hand. He said, always give compliments. Then a guidance counselor told me, I can't remember this scenario / situation, but a kid did something wrong and one of the teachers reprimanded him and then he was crying. And so the teacher said to me, she said, Zach, I want to give you a piece of advice. She's like, at this age, you could, reprimand a kid. They could like sit out of a game for 2 minutes. She's like, then let them back. She's like, never finish class with a kid who didn't get to finish on a positive. And so I kept that in the front of my mind that let's say sometimes you have a tough heart-to-heart conversation with a kid, or you're just tough on the kid. Mm-hmm. You got to say, listen, stop being a whiny bitch. You need to tough it out here. You got to have a compliment to follow that up later on, because the generation of today, they need it. Whereas I look, the way I was coached in the early 90s, late 80s, they would MF you up and down. They didn't care to finish on a positive. They would say things like, get tough, but no context behind it. And so I pick up from everything, not just strength coaches. Mm-hmm. And then you have to find ways to, like a chef, or not even a chef, like a conductor of an orchestra. You have to find a way to like bring it together, right? To have everybody just kind of working together. And so, look, I still make mistakes coaching. And I think that's another thing is not everybody coaches. You want to coach your face off, especially in those early years, to the point of like you're exhausted. And then you have to train yourself at the end of the night because you didn't have time to train during the day. Well, guess what you're learning? You're learning how to train yourself under fatigue. How's that going to help you? You're going to train athletes who might be coming to you after school. Maybe they go to school, then work, then they're coming to train with you. And now you know what it's like to train under fatigue. So how do you adjust it? What does the warm-up look like? What changes maybe to the music? Does the warm-up change to somebody who's training on a Saturday morning versus a Thursday evening? Saturday's the end of the week. Friday night, they maybe didn't get to bed on time. Their back is probably tight. They've been laying down, so the spinal fluid hasn't been moving around. What do you change? That's why as a coach, you should expose yourself and kind of try to, break your old self, meaning, okay, you always train with barbells. Well, these next 2 weeks, you're not going to touch a barbell. You're going to train with kettlebells and sandbags only, and then the next 2 weeks, body weight only, but you could change the body weight training. I'm going to allow you to add weight to it. I'm going to allow you to add bands. You could do plyometric with the body weight. You could do high reps with the body weight. You could do tempo with the body weight. You could apply the conjugate / West Side method to a body weight program. You could have a strength day. You could have a speed day. You could have a repetition / bodybuilding day. And then you could add like an athletic development day with all kinds of coordinated movements and modified gymnastics. Well, it's body weight training, but I'm going to borrow the West Side program design model and apply it. So there's a lot of,
or triphasic or Bill Starr, like
100%. What did John say in the podcast with Louis? He goes, I'm just standing on the shoulders of giants. I didn't invent anything. And so the coaches who can apply from everybody and kind of craft it, those will become the best coaches. You don't have to invent anything or come up with a name for the exercise,
Yeah, and don't pretend to. The
correct.
One note
Don't pretend.
Is you set yourself up for this, going back to the coach you had where you had jumping on mats and you believed like you were strong, you believed you were in shape, and they were still able to find something where you had a weakness. And your thought process, it wasn't, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. I'm strong. I'm in shape. It was, what is going on? Why can't I do this? And then you were open to understanding the why. And then later on, you got the opportunity to apply it and really see it unfold for the different group there rather than just your own personal experience with this form of training and fitness.
You have to be open-minded as a coach. I mean, if you're not open-minded, you're screwed. And I got to tell you, the great thing about Colin, who's interning with me now, is I got to tell you, he sucked in communicating. I mean, sucked is an understatement. He's when you guys came to Manasquan, we went out to this bar that's on First Ave. He's renting an apartment right there, and I was so
good for him.
I was a millimeter away from saying, dude, on Friday night, you need to go to that place and get a job as a bar back. Because I wanted him to learn how to talk with different people, adults, younger people, an angry drunk person, somebody who's emotional coming in, kind of drink. I wanted him to learn. And in my early 20s, I was a bartender. I spent 6 months working in a shot and beer joint. And I had to learn to speak with different people. Here's an interesting fact. Lauren Landau, he's like 2 years older than me. Him and I kind of go through that same early days. There wasn't strength and conditioning. There wasn't exercise science. There was adult fitness, which was like the cardiac rehab option in undergrad, or you went for health and phys ed. His first job, like mine, was in a hospital. He worked in cardiac rehab. I worked in a fitness center, which was connected to cardiac rehab. So when somebody was done with cardiac rehab, they came to the fitness center. I had to learn to work with the CFO of the hospital would come in to train and ask me advice. Local people in the community, so adults would come in, nurses, doctors. In the summertime, adults would bring their kids. I had to learn to work with all these different personality types, age groups. I remember the CEO, Lou, and I remember I was calling him by his last name, Mr. Da-da-da. He's like, don't do that. Call me Lou. And it just taught me sometimes people don't want to be put on the pedestal. They just want to be part of the crew. There was another guy, Dennis. He was a former Vietnam vet. He would like train on his own. And then I remember he kind of ran the show there. So one day I showed him how to do like drop sets. And he was like this. His eyes, he's like, you're the master. It was like, thought I was like the master because I was bringing him all of these bodybuilding intensity techniques. Now, think about it. He's a Vietnam vet. He's gone through a lot of shit. He likes the crazy stuff. He thrives on it. Now, let's say you train somebody else who's coming through like a corporate, white collar back. They may not want any of that. They might, you don't know. So you're learning the personalities. You're learning how to apply different training methods. And then you're also learning as a coach, there's a time and a place for everything. So how long can I apply, dinosaur training and strongman training to a group? In my early days of strength and conditioning, the athletes I trained would handle it year round. Now I like barely ever flip a tire. And sometimes I say to myself, damn, it's like you get too smart. You start to overthink. And that's why sometimes I like to be around younger coaches because they're a little bit more ballsy with pushing the envelope, which is needed in these combative sports. You need to do this kind of training that really develops the mind. Sometimes we get so segmented to just the weight room. We're just using the barbell. We're not going outside. We're inside. And I remember when I transitioned from my garage and the backyard and the local playground to my first warehouse, I felt like we lost something. And we did. We didn't have the hill that we used to sprint. We weren't out at the open parking lot to push my truck around. We didn't have a playground, 250 feet away that we would sprint to and press picnic tables. You know why we pressed picnic tables? Because I saw a documentary on the California prisons when the weights were taken out. You saw prisoners pressing picnic tables, getting under the picnic table, floor pressing it. So I implemented that. I even implemented, mentioning it's not mentioned in this book, but in the early 90s, I had a VHS tape. I watched it every day, every night. Wrestling season was called Competitor Supreme. You could find bits and pieces of it on YouTube. And it's Dan Gable's video. He's always talking about outwork everybody, outwork the competition. That did not work well for my body. It kicked my ass. It broke me down. Well, as I started training wrestlers, I had a kid that would train with the football players. He thrived on lifting heavy and high volume. He took 5th in the state. This other kid thrived on optimal training. He would need me to taper him before a tournament, taper before the end of the season. Instead of training an hour, a month out, it became 45 minutes. 2 weeks out, it became 30 minutes. The last week before we took a week off, it was like a 22-minute lift. He needed optimal. I had a kid that took 2nd in the state. He showed up like 2 days before the state tournament to train. The more he trained, the better he felt. Dan Gable used to do something called like red flag days. And basically it was like he'd put red flags out and they knew that they were about to go through fucking hell. And he would have them, carry each other up and down the stadium stairs on your back. Then I'd hold your ankles. You'd walk up the stadium stairs on your hands. Then we'd run up and down the stadium stairs. You would pummel. And so you need to know who's going to respond well to that. When I was at Lehigh, our heavyweight was very strong. He loved lifting. So what they did was they gave him an extra day off of wrestling and allowed him to lift. And that was the year he became an All-American. The year before, he did what everybody else did. And so certainly when you're training with a team, there's not a ton of individualization, but there does need to be. Mm-hmm. And so as a coach, if you can apply that art blended with the science, and you have the coach's eye, and that only happens through a lot of training. Like I started training in 1989, coaching in 95. Today, when I was lifting, I was using the bamboo bar. And believe it or not, I never did triceps to the neck. I would always do like triceps to the forehead, tricep extensions, bands from all these angles. Today, I was doing triceps go down to the neck or to the throat. And I was like, damn, I never felt that in my triceps before. And so Colin is 27. And I'm like, Colin, I've been lifting for longer than you've been on earth. And and I said to him, I go, here I am learning something new. I said, so you have to always learn something new. And sometimes an intern will say stuff to me. They've done this before. And I respond in a pretty straightforward way. Like, okay, today you're going to train with our group, and they might see squats. And then the intern will say, I squatted yesterday. And then I'm like, then what the fuck are you here for? How are you learning? And I can't remember if you had interviewed somebody that were podcast recently, but they were talking about, they did legs on, let's say, a Tuesday. They went to West Side on Wednesday, or Elite. They were going to West Side and Elite, and they had already done legs. And they were like, all right, we're squatting today. They were like, all right, let's fucking go. Versus saying, oh, I squatted yesterday. My legs are sore. When you're young, don't say no to anything. If somebody says we're doing chest and buys today, do it. Do chest and biceps. Learn what it's like. Like, don't tell me you trained chest yesterday. And that is a major problem when coaches, and it's not just young coaches, you have adult coaches, my age, older, who they will not open their mind up. They are like, this is what we do, period, end of story. To me, there's no beauty in that. To me, the real beauty in, like I want to break who I was yesterday and become better. I want you to put me through a program that, if I say I can't do something, it's because I have a legitimate injury, or I'll be like, yo, dude, maybe that's probably not the best thing for me after, 4 knee surgeries, I'll say. But otherwise, I am still learning. Like, to get better with my knee, I had to study a lot of Cal Dietz's stuff, the isometrics, the eccentrics. Jake Tura, young strength coach, had to really dig deep into what he was doing with, knee health. Even nutrition. I learned from this young coach, Ryan Nye. He works at my buddy's place, Mike Guadango. And he was telling me, he's like, man, I thought I was going to get a knee replacement. My knee was killing me. He's like, and I just cut out processed food. I cut out junk food. So I cut out processed foods, and my knee and everything started feeling better. So I learned from just a text exchange from a young coach. And I didn't say, oh, I've been coaching longer than Ryan's been alive. I don't care. You might be younger than me and smarter and better. I'll learn from you. That is the only way I can tell kids to do better. Because if I'm not getting better, I have no authority or right to say for you to get better if I'm like, I'm good enough. So you gotta be, that's why, I tell my wife, look, I don't feel like I'm a good enough coach. I every day feel like I got to get better. And that inspires me. That's probably why I get excited to coach still after all these years. It's exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a comment from another coach out there that I guess they were stressed and, speaking to me and said that like their teams weren't fun anymore. And I'm like, my man, like, even though like you have losing seasons or, you get some challenging kids on the team, like I still haven't had a day where I don't enjoy showing up and working with the young batch of athletes.
Dude.
So I couldn't connect in that moment, but aim to help them along to get refocused. So it was an interesting conversation that
He's a sport coach or a strength coach?
Both.
See, I want to say this about that.
That's a cool opportunity that I always appreciated. That, man, you get influence across the board. You get weight room and sport, and that,
I do like that.
Yeah, that was valuable for me when I first started my coaching career, especially on the communication end. So then stuck with fun communication tricks picked up from Bert Bartholomew.
Yes.
Just to try to get some fun out of it. And Brett speaks about this in his courses.
Yeah.
Like when speed training stopped being fun for him, looked for a challenging way to communicate, asked his intern pick one piece of equipment.
Yes.
Med ball, whatever it may be. And then, okay, that's the equipment we're going to use for speed today. So would put zero context for the kid and then just use that to challenge himself and keep it interesting. So aim to give that coach some guidance there.
Think about this.
Yeah.
Think about this, Tex. You just mentioned, what's so cool about you being a sport and strength coach. Who was consistently the sport and strength coach? The Russians. They were both. So they were always on the floor, able to marry everything together because they constantly could see what was going on. So now in the college setting, when we see sport coaches attending practice, and I get it, it's a lot of time.
Strength coaches.
That's what strength coaches attending sport practice, my bad, because now you get to see what's going on. Also watching the competition. So let's say our heavyweight, I remember at Lehigh, he would lose a lot of close matches. I was like, he's just got to get a little tougher. So I'm going to add a couple extra exercises that keep him moving and build some muscular endurance in the shoulders and arms. And then I'm going to compliment him. I'm going to be like, dude, you're a beast. This is the stuff that's going to give you the edge. You're getting better. And you got to look for things that inspire you. Here's what I think will inspire a coach forever. If you genuinely care about people and the kids that you're training or the adults, whoever you're training, if you genuinely care, you're just going to find a way to get better. You're going to find a way to have the energy during a tough time in your life. And so, you talking about your coaching lacrosse, and how that's like fun and exciting because it gives you a change of atmosphere, you know? And so when COVID started, whatever this was 2.5 years ago, I had to furlough my coaches. So it was just me. And then I remember it was like in the fall, and I was saying to myself, my God, like I am so tired of running this warm up. I need to get creative. But I felt like I lost creativity at my school. I was running like 6 30-minute groups a day. Then I'd go and run my gym for 3 hours. And I think it's good that my coaches are all different. I don't want another Zach Even-Esh. I'm too like OCD. Sometimes I'm too intense for the kids. So one day I just said to the kids, and it was a Wednesday. It's how we came up with Wacky Wednesday. I was feeling in a rut. So I said, all right, you guys run the warm up today. Create your own warm up. And they're like, us? I'm like, yep. What are we doing first? Text, what are we doing? Well, we're finally back in school. The first kid does is he grabs a kid in a fireman's carry, puts him on his back and runs with him. This is at a time where we hadn't shaken hands with people in ages because of all this stupid COVID shit. He's fireman carries him. Then the next one was piggyback ride. Then the next group came in and they came up with medicine ball tag. And I can't believe nobody like split their head open. They were like running in between the squat racks. They were jumping over shit. But it was the ultimate, quote unquote, speed and agility warm up we ever did. So then I said, you know what? This warm up was awesome. The next group, I said, boom, create your warm up. I said, you could use anything. Your warm up does not have to be the same skipping shit that we always do. So I was like, you want a bench? You want a dumbbell bench? Go for it. They started coming up with free weights and then they went out on a run. They just did different stuff that maybe as coaches were, quote, I'm using air quotes for those listening. That's not scientifically correct. So then I let them create the whole workout. The last group, I said, all right, you're going to do the whole workout. It was a brutal training session, meaning they did sumo deadlift for like 5x5. Whereas if I'm programming a sumo deadlift, it might be like a 5-5-3, 2-2. I don't want you to work your back too much. They didn't think about that shit. They went 5x5. Then they coupled it with like 25 reps of face pulls. It's 125 reps. I'd be like, you'll do 15 reps because after 15, your technique degrades. They were like, fuck that, 25. Then they did benching coupled with landmine press. Well, as a strength coach, you'd be like, oh no, you're pressing. You need to follow it with a pull. Dude, I said the number one rule on Wacky Wednesday is there are no rules. So the benching was something like 17 reps, 9 reps, 7 reps, then a 1 rep max. Then you're going to landmine press for 9 reps. So you're going to destroy your shoulders. But you know what? It's once in a blue moon. And that to me got exciting. So then it became Wacky Wednesday where they get to choose as a group different stuff. One group did just like benching coupled with curls, which I thought was like, oh, and then when I started thinking about it, I'm like, dude, that's like just upper body endurance training, which is great for wrestlers. It's great for anybody who needs to build muscle. And then Dave Tate said this 20 years ago. I still remember it. He goes, everybody's so against the bench press. He's like, but if a teenager boosts his bench press, you boost their confidence. And if you could boost an athlete's confidence, you have a better athlete. He goes, so I don't give a fuck if it's functional or not. And so now I look at training that builds confidence, that doesn't just build the body. Mm-hmm. And so for that guy that was like, this is not fun. Well, look, sometimes I don't feel like I'm fun. And then I let the kids give some input. And I got to say this, I still make mistakes. Sometimes it doesn't work out and then you got to fix it and, react and adjust to it on the fly.
Yeah. I don't have a weight room with my guys now, but what we do is essentially, I don't have a label for them, but athletic challenges. One of which is shin hop. So if imagine like we not lay down, but we sit down on our shins. So our butts are touching our heels, shins are on the ground. I'm either in plantar or dorsiflexion, just chilling on my butt. And then you got a violent hip extension, pop up and catch in your athletic position.
Yep.
Not easy, but introduce it to them, putting them in a position to fail. I know they can't do this. It's this first time movement, but then we come back to it 2 or 3 weeks later. So then they start to gradually get invested in some of the things we're doing because guess what? Even though we didn't do it, pop, and they catch. And it's almost this moment of surprise confidence in themselves that they're able to accomplish that. If I had weights, you better believe we'd be bench pressing and getting confidence there, but we got nothing but body weight out there.
Well, you know what else it might do is a kid who struggles. Now it's like a coachable moment, as you say, Tex, is like, hey guys, if you struggled on that, I'm not telling you that you can't practice it at home. You might want to work on that at home. Mm-hmm. Or if you think you're too heavy, might be a good opportunity to dial in your nutrition and don't eat, Pop-Tarts anymore, have a turkey sandwich instead of the Pop-Tart. At my high school, the football team is scheduled to train Monday through Thursday. And to me, 4 days in a row is quote unquote not correct. It's not optimal. So Thursday is like this fun day. And sometimes it's like a full arm day. Other times it's group challenges. So it might be like, you're talking about, you got nothing but body weight. I would say, okay, you're going in groups of 4, but you have to have different grade levels. So you can't all be rising seniors or all be rising juniors. So I'm going to say you have 5 minutes to get as many push-ups as possible, but I'm giving you 30 seconds to strategize. What's the strategy? You got a guy that weighs 250. You got a guy that weighs 150. I said, now think about this. The next, group challenge is going to be the tire flip. Okay. So maybe the big guys didn't do as many push-ups. You might have them do more tire flips. So I just switch. Thursday becomes this kind of blend of all of my knowledge of old stuff. These videos of Dr. Ken training the football team, I borrow stuff from that all the time. So I'll say groups of 4, you have to run a lap around the softball team, around the softball field. And you need 1 medicine ball, and you have to switch that medicine ball every 50 feet. Well, now the lighter guys, or maybe the girls soccer team wins the whole race because that's their forte. So I pick all these things where you might struggle, you might be good, but it requires strategizing, communication with the team. And, I wish I could remember where I've heard some of these things. I forget. It may have been Louis. I know we're talking about Louis a lot, and rightfully so. I've learned so much from him. I think he was saying, talking about on football, how sometimes the coaches say, hey, I want my leaders to go run this. He goes, well, what do you got? 4 leaders and fucking 50 followers? He's like, I want everybody a leader. And so I started using that phrase at my school, everybody a leader. And so a couple of weeks ago, we did a run around the softball field, which is maybe a quarter mile. And I don't care if that's not quote unquote sports specific for a lineman or a big guy. You're a teenager. If you can't run a quarter mile, fuck that. You should run a quarter mile. Well, these 2 freshmen were trying to stop. They were trying to quit. So these 2 bigger kids, rising seniors, I was like, oh, where's so-and-so? The other one, it's one of the twins. He's like, he's outside. He's like, some of the freshmen were trying to stop before the lap was done, and he wouldn't let them stop. So I came back in. I was like, dude, you were keeping an eye on them? He goes, yeah, everybody's a leader. That's what he said to me. And so you don't know when you're making an impact on somebody. And sometimes I exchange text messages with a coach I used to work with, Donnie Pritzloff. I love this guy. Just mentioning his name inspires me. He was an extremely successful wrestler, very tough. I exchanged messages with him and his cousin, also a former national champ. So we do these back and forth exchanges. But I remember once after a training session, talking with Donnie, he goes, Zach, you can never give up on a kid because you never know what he could turn into. He's like, a kid could, for 4 years, be a thorn in your side, be a headache. He goes, then 5th year, he'll be an All-American. He'll turn the corner. He's like, you never know what somebody can become. And not that I didn't know, but I understood even more so from that conversation that, just play the long game. Meaning, I'm not interested in, trying to transform you in these next 3 months. And I know you guys just interviewed Matt Wenning. Matt Wenning and I and Joe DeFranco, we're doing a seminar next week. Well, Matt Wenning talks often about how people are just too interested in what they could do in these next 3 months or 3 years. He goes, really, you need to be thinking about the next 5 to 10 years. If I could have known Matt when I was younger, it would have saved me a lot of pain. See, emotionally and mentally, I was crazy. You couldn't really like stop me or slow me down. I did high volume, high intensity. I just destroyed my body. Well, Matt has this saying that I love. He goes, when you're in your 20s, you want to train like you're in your 40s, so that when you're in your 40s, you feel like you're in your 20s. And so when I'm training athletes now, I explain to them, why am I switching? Why am I putting you on the Swiss bar? Because I don't care if you're going to compete in college or not. But when you're in your 30s or 40s and you have kids and you could throw that football pain-free, I want you to remember that we trained with intelligence, and I didn't try to destroy your body. My goal was to preserve your body.
Yeah, I take the same approach in trying to pull sport coaches away from using conditioning as punishment, as you expressed with the Marine teacher who used push-ups as punishment, because I don't want, and this is really, really long-term thinking, I don't want a negative relationship with fitness, with hard work. So if, oh crap, I have to run, I'm going to go through it half speed and half motion, with poor body language, versus up tall, sprint my butt off, and then compete with the guy next to me. I don't care who it is, So it is long term, and there's different tools that we can implement, and label as punishment. Isometrics are a hell of a lot more harder than running a half gasser.
Yeah,
I'd rather have 60 seconds of dead bugs than a full gasser with 60 seconds, right? So it's aiming, and then the kid is physically going to get a hell of a lot more takeaway with that, because we're, working on good posture. And then mentally, it sucks. And you can hide in a run. With a dead bug, you can't hide. It's clear who goes down and fails while the rest of your team is working hard. So coaches can call them out whether they choose to individually in front of the group, or, walk up to them in a moment and say, hey, get your damn legs up.
The work is the gift. The work is the gift.
Beautifully said.
There's a lot. There's just so much to learn, Tex. That's the beauty of, to even call it strength and conditioning. I know that's what's kind of commonly, I use the word sports performance more, but what the beauty is like, you're always learning. I didn't learn weightlifting until Travis Mash did a weightlifting seminar at my gym. And I think I was 35. So I didn't learn how to do cleans until Travis came around and taught me how to front squat and clean. And so it's exciting to, go down the rabbit hole and try to get better. And so if you even don't have somebody to be mentored by, right? Like I'm jealous that you guys have all these kind of local colleges. I can't even give a internship away, which is a little bit heartbreaking. I remember actually one kid said to me, he's like, I think I've earned my way to just be a coach. I mean, I know how to do all this stuff. Like, again, you might know how to train yourself, and maybe you are a freak athlete. Well, how do you coach a kid who doesn't know how to do a push-up, who can't do a push-up? And this is where parents made a lot of mistakes when, private schools started kind of hiring, the kid that graduated and he was a D1 football player, and they just assume this guy can now be the strength coach. I think what's given me a lot of connectivity to kids is all my injuries, my struggles, and all the mistakes I have made in communication, which I still make mistakes, but I've been, like you mentioned, do you call somebody out in front? I've called kids out in front of kids, which didn't work. I've sometimes called kids out in front of kids, and it does work, and so if you don't have a mentor, what you need to do is really invest, not just financially, but time in your education. Meaning, Um, Matt Wenning's a close friend of mine. We've known each other a long time. When he releases a product, I buy it. I don't say, Matt, send it to me. And then I do the workouts to test and see what it feels like. Colin, when he began interning, I said, all right, what you're going to do is every morning you're going to come here and you're going to do, I have a ebook called the Kettlebell Bodyweight Hybrid Course. It's 6 weeks of kettlebells and body weight. I said, that's what you're going to do every morning. And then you're going to train with the last group of the night. So if we do a 4, 5, 6, on Monday, you'll train with a high school kid. On Tuesday, you'll train with a middle school kid. On Wednesday, you'll do a trial with a kid on his first day. You're going to learn what it feels like from every imaginable angle. You'll train with an in-season athlete, an off-season athlete, a kid who's been with me for 6 years, a kid who's been with me for 6 weeks. But it was this constant, like, putting him in places where he'd never been. And the best thing to me about Colin, I haven't had an intern for a long time. The best thing was he never had like an answer, like a rebuttal. I would say, Colin, when so-and-so asked you how to do the row and he asked, should it be kettlebells, dumbbells, center mass bells? You just said, hey, pick one. He's asking you because he wants to know your answer. So I told him, I said, he's doing 4 sets. You should have said something like, do 2 sets with a kettlebell, 2 sets with a dumbbell. Or if it was 3 sets, 1 kettlebell, 1 dumbbell, 3rd set, your choice. I go, so just and he goes, that makes a lot of sense. I'm going to try that next time. Thank you for that. Versus sometimes I've had interns who'd be like, well, this is why I did it. Bro, I'm trying to help you. And sometimes I'm just going to tell you the way it is. And that's what we need is this. See, today's generation, me working in a high school, nobody gets in trouble, Tex. Like, you could do jack shit and still get a B. Whereas if you did jack shit 2 decades ago, you failed. And so this younger generation coming up has to understand that you might be mentored and it might be pretty damn tough. Like Joe Ken was very tough on the guys that interned for him. But guess where they are now? In the NFL, at Division I universities. Adam Feit is a professor and in charge of all the interns. It makes sense. You need to go through, like Louis says, to master martial arts, the training must be severe. And I posted something on Instagram of like a famous judoka from Japan, and it outlines his workout. And it's like 9 hours a day. It's 1,000 push-ups. And then it's like max out bench press. Then it's like hopping on 1 foot for 400 meter. People are, John always says it. They're so upset. First of all, I don't even know if it's real. It could be fake. It could be fiction, the whole thing, number one. Number two, I'm not saying that's what everybody should do. I'm just sharing something that's inspiring. What can you learn from it? You might say, you know what? Once a month, I need my own red flag day, a high volume, high rep, challenge myself. The other thing might simply be it inspires you to work harder today. And the other thing might be that guy's one in a gazillion who has the mentality where he thrives under high volume and high intensity. But nobody wants to dig into the context. They just want to be like, that's just muscular endurance. That's not this. Look, bro, I'm telling you, I don't know if it's true, if it's not true. But what I'm saying is there's a learning opportunity there. And you're approaching it with a closed mind. What did John say? He goes, if you're showing up to this, to, the block one, coaching experience and your glass is already full, then what the fuck are you doing here? Mm-hmm. My favorite story of you guys, I don't know if you were here. Luca shared it. The dude who in Germany ate, maybe it was in California. He ate pizza. He ate pizza in the back. And then after the 2 days.
During the nutrition lecture.
And then he wanted the certificate of participation. And I'm so proud of Luke that he's like, what the fuck, bro? It's a certificate of participation. You sat in the back.
Yeah. Yeah. So, went for a long lunch. I forget which country he was actually from. But, celebrating a very long siesta in the middle of the day, missing lectures. And
it's insane.
different movement components, and then brings pizza back with him to sit in the nutrition lecture. And basically Luke led that one. And, just, I know Luke well, and when he's pissed, he dials in. So he's just looking at this man giving a lecture in front of 40 people and just trying to really grill and get it in. And then, stood his ground following. And,
but there's still people like that. And you can't be a coach if you're closed-minded. There's something to learn everywhere, even if you don't agree with any of those things. And sometimes it's hard, like I remember when you guys did your certification here in Manasquan, I was dealing with something with my Achilles, something with my ankle. Like I was afraid that if I was going to do any of that, I'm going to tear my Achilles. I could not figure it out. And so I was afraid. I'm like, if I go through this thing, and what I should have done is gone there and just soaked in what I could have. But sometimes you're just, and what actually got me to fix it was I came across an old video of Dick Hartzell, who's the first guy who created the jump stretch bands. And he had this old video from, it may have been the early 90s. And in like 2 or 3 days, I was able to run again. And I called it the $10,000 ankle, because I was going to acupuncture and massage and chiropractic and laser therapy. And, I saw Luke Edwards in the conjugate group in Facebook. He said, the answer is in the gym. The answer is through movement is really the ticket. Is you have to learn to figure things out and be open-minded to trying stuff. That coach who just sat and ate pizza, that there's still people like that. They're not necessarily eating pizza while you're speaking, but they're tuning it out. And how are you going to get good, let alone great, if you're closed-minded and don't want to learn? And you say something like, that stuff was 10 years ago. That doesn't work. John still talks about Zangus, about squatting the way he squatted was the wrong way, even though he learned a lot about training. He talks about one of his strength coaches in college who would, if you asked a question, he responded like he was bothered by you. And so I recommend coaches to purchase on eBay the old strength and health magazines from the 50s and 60s, because there's a blend of powerlifting, weightlifting, and like they do a lot of hand balancing / gymnastics. It's, I know I'm kind of paraphrasing, but when I see some coaches on social, all I see are squats and cleans. There's got to be, hopefully there's something more than that. There's movement and rotation and jumping and sprinting and free play to build athleticism. Who's great? Kurt Hester. He calls it a ghetto ball, and people of course get upset, but it's essentially like I don't know if it's like an ultimate football. You have the ball, you're running, you're dodging, you're competing. That's a guy too that always talks about just this open-mindedness to get better. And Kurt, I think, is mid-50s, and he's still talking about always getting better. So if he's still talking about it and he's been coaching for 30 plus years, these younger coaches have to adopt that open-mindedness. Even listening to you, Tex, during podcasts, you're learning from every guest, and it's quite evident. You're excited and enthusiastic and invested in learning from them, and you've taken the time to read their book. A lot of people won't do that, and that's where you need to be. Books and whatnot are this kind of thing of the past. I don't know how deep your learning can go if you're only learning from Instagram. There's certainly a lot of amazing YouTube videos, right? Some YouTube videos are an hour long, people sharing a lot of stuff, but you don't want to just learn through the visual. You want to get your books, and you want to, earmark them and highlight them and test things out, and then maybe, okay, I read a book from Louis. Now I'm going to watch one of his videos. All right, now I'm going to go watch something from Lauren Landau on the speed training. Then I'm going to apply that speed training. I'm going to do those sprints or this warm up that he showed in the video. You got to become this experiment of your own.
Yeah. And you're describing how we develop the Power Athlete Methodology course. So it's in the form of a written workbook. And I mean, we wrote it, we combed over it. So that way every line meant something within there. And how we wrote it is there's, and I love the quotes, I love the catchphrases, right? Teach movement, not movements. Meaning we're focusing on finding the connections between the squat, the step, and the lunge, and the sprint, and jumping, and football, and lacrosse, and wrestling. So that way we're aiming to use the weight room to teach athleticism and athletes versus football players. So that's an example, but we have those throughout. And then from that one catchphrase, one-liner is, a well-written article explaining that, and then paired with the writing, we also have online videos where it's me or John at the whiteboard, explaining it in a very socially intelligent way so you can digest it to do one of two things. Apply it to your athletes, so coach and communicate it, show the parents, okay, this is what we're doing, why we're doing it, and then feel it for yourself. Okay, this is me under the weight, under the stress. This is me sprinting or me accelerating and starting in this different foot position. So it's your ability to communicate it and then your ability to feel it. So that way, okay, I feel what it feels like. I know this one-liner on how to do it. Now, how many 5 different ways can I say this so this individual kid or parent can understand it? So it's blending this different forms of learning, reading, in the video, and then we connect it to the program, the strength training program, which is Bedrock. So that way you're going through the online course, you're applying the Bedrock program and seeing intramuscular coordination.
You're getting under the bar.
Okay, I reset. And then after our first reset, I need to introduce compensatory acceleration. So now I'm 30 pounds lighter on my squat. I introduce speed with the objective of breaking through that plateau. But if we just talked about speed and then told our athletes, faster, our athletes, they're not coordinated enough with, okay, I'm trying, but my body's not clicking. So we go heavy as hell, fail, decrease the load. This is over a matter of weeks, not just one day. Now they're coordinated enough and it feels lighter. Okay,
and
then
they understand.
Exactly.
You know what else they understand? Is by doing cat training, you're able to teach them that we're always doing speed. It's not just when we're sprinting or jumping. You're doing speed work in the weight room. And then, like Brett would say, you build that buy-in. Now a kid says, oh, I thought I had to go to a speed coach. No. This is speed training wherever whatever we're doing. There has to be that element of speed. And I love that you're pairing training with becoming the Block 1 coach, because I'll say this. I've run into some interns at these big D1 universities, and they look like maybe they could squat 315. And I'm thinking to myself, you're training guys that are benching 405. Mm-hmm. And if you haven't lifted, look, you don't have to bench 405. Especially if you're, 5'7" and, 175 pounds.
You taking shots right here?
No. I'm just kind of painting a picture of you're probably not going to bench 405 unless you're that big ass lineman, right? What I'm saying is some of these students getting into strength and conditioning are not lifting. They have not lifted. And then they become interns in these major programs with massive people. You will struggle to relate to anything going through that person's mind if you haven't struggled under heavy lifting. So when I see kids like that, interns like that, I'm looking at like my bookshelf, some old books like The Keys to Progress is old book by John McCallum. And it's like, all these old articles. Iron Mind reprinted it, of like gaining weight and drinking, the crash weight gain homemade shake that you make with, like, they called it like bricks of ice cream. You have to go through these struggles so you understand what the athletes you're training are emotionally facing when they go under a heavy bar. Because if you've never approached the squat bar, let's say you're squatting on Monday, you should be thinking about it on Friday night. I know that sounds crazy, but that's what it takes. You should be visualizing the weight. You should be already playing the movie in your head. When I hear a, young coach, train with me, and they'll be like, "Hey, ready? Let's fucking do this. Kill that weight. All right, I think I'm going to get 2. Think about what? I fucking played a movie in my head. I already know I'm getting 2. And I know people are going to hate on me for this, probably get my car tires slashed. But I say, I never saw people miss reps until I saw CrossFit. People would squat, they'd like struggle a little, and then they'd like jump out. Quit
or
under the
bail
bar.
it over their head.
Right.
Danger.
Yeah. Chop off half of your head. That was never an option in the gyms I grew up in. And that was the beauty of coming up in gyms in a time where you didn't have AirPods, because guess how you had to learn? You had to go and speak to people. You had to train hard and build muscle to earn respect, or nobody spoke to you. You had to kind of watch from the corner of your eye what the biggest, strongest guys were doing. And then you would try to apply it yourself and figure things out. And there needs to be this, strength has lost a lot of respect. It's almost like a bad word in today's field. Like, God forbid you mention strength when you're talking to parents, or when you're talking, everybody thinks speed this, speed that. Well, listen, I always say, I've never seen somebody who's weak, who's so fast, or, hey, he's so weak, that's why he's killing it out there. She's so weak, thank God. Nobody ever says that. But strength is like still equated with the 1 rep max, dog shitting razor blades, deadlift. There's a lot of ways to develop strength. And that's why you have to read about it and experience it yourself. And that's why I take all of those experiences that I luckily learned from. And I got to tell you, what's like heartbreaking is I don't have a lot of people to share it with, meaning, I've commented on one of your YouTube videos like a month ago. I don't know, there was like 40 views. And I was like, what the fuck is this? 40 views for this amazing information? Like, YouTube sucks. It's like, if you're not doing if you're not deadlifting with your hair on fire and your weights are made of like gold, like YouTube needs to push up the great information that's not filled with bullshit. Because why do we have all this information out there, but people are still weak? People still don't know how to bench press properly. They don't know where to line up under the bar or what their wrist position should look like. There's a gazillion videos out there teaching it, but that's not the stuff that makes it in front of the masses. And I think that's why we're in this, struggle, why, strength coaches argue over, I saw somebody post like Mike Boyle's doing like a split squat. He's like, isn't this the same as a deadlift? It looks like similar motion to a trap bar deadlift. Jim Wendler once said to me, he goes, listen, I don't get this was before he was doing all that bodyweight stuff. He's like, listen, I don't get all hyped up to, break a PR on my, split squat. He's like, but you want me to break a PR on a deadlift, a clean? He's like, then we get excited. And when I heard him say that, what I'm thinking is that develops an aspect of the mind that a lot of people just don't understand today as coaches, that yes, unilateral training is crucial, but not just what it does for athleticism. What does it do for the mind? And that's why you got to train and experiment with a lot of different training and read about a lot of stuff so you can have that, that big dictionary to pull from.
Yeah. And there's so many athletes that developed their performance lifestyle and success through training and attribute it to training versus natural gifts. One of my favorites is Adam Nelson. Speaking with him, several power athlete symposiums, and sitting down at the table just having open conversations. I look forward to seeing him at Summer Strong. One of my favorite stories that he shares, Adam Nelson, Olympic gold medalist, and
crazy story.
Yeah, well, one of them, man, it must have been the 2000 Olympics, because or 2004. I can't remember which one exactly it was. It was either Sydney or Greece. But Tommy Lasorda, of all people, so famous baseball player and manager for the Dodgers, and recognizes Adam through one way or another, and sees him in the chow hall, just right at the entrance where all these athletes and coaches are coming in, and speaks with Adam, and you got the game coming up. Like Lasorda was commenting on the game versus just the field event. And Adam's like, yes, got the game coming up, and he's like, well, are you gonna win? And Adam says, yes, sir, I'll try. And Lasorda, in front of this crowded room, just loses his stuff. And you got to, I'll link it up in here because Adam tells it because he experienced it, but he's just like, try. And Lasorda loses his mind of just the word try. Yeah. And one of my favorite stories that sticks with me, and when I hear an athlete say that, like, I'll try. No. And you can even say, like, the Yoda, there is no try, only do. But, like, what do you mean? Like, I want you to expect to win. That's not Lasorda. That's me, like, giving it to the athletes. But this story, and I'm going to watch the video as soon as we're off here, man, because it charges me up. Yeah. That this professional Lasorda coach and former professional athlete himself is speaking to another professional and still teaching him lessons that you got this moment, man. And you need, no, I don't need your best. I need everything you got in this moment to get out there and show the world something. So, like, man, that Adam's sharing that, and still, like, there's communication lessons from other coaches. I went on a fun reading. I read other coaches' books across the spectrum of sport and performance and competition, not just training. And I went on a Pat Riley kick, and I had so much fun just learning how Pat Riley was managing the Showtime Lakers and then going on to the Knicks, an even bigger stage, and even bigger personalities. And now he's created what's known in the NBA as heat culture, and he attracts talent that wants to work hard and win versus just be the man. So appreciate him. So reading these old, just paper-bound books got at used bookstores on the Showtime Lakers, like, he's the man. I freaking love Pat Riley from, like, his narrative. And now there's an HBO series about the Showtime Lakers, a dramatization that it's fun, it's exaggerating. But yeah, man, I take that perspective of learning, and I appreciate, and I got to deep dive into your history video, your Iron Roots videos here. Now I know they're free on YouTube. Yeah, you're gonna love them. Yeah, man. But if in like this, I attribute it from my dad, who's all into sports, and then would communicate on coaches. Lou Holtz, goal setting. And my dad went to North Carolina State, so followed NC State sports because I was D3. Like, we didn't have a football team. But yeah, Jim Valvano, so the 83 championship, NC State, like, win in advance, don't give up, don't ever give up. So Jimmy V there. And then certain coaches through NC State history that, like, Chuck Amato, who's Phillip Rivers' head football coach. Like, my dad went to college with him at NC State. And then Lou Holtz was the state coach, then went on to Notre Dame. So my uncle went to Notre Dame. So then my dad was all in on Holtz and, like, teaching these outlook lessons. Yeah. One of my favorite Lou Holtz is win. So he'd be on the sideline and just scream at his team, win, win, win. And all the opponents are like, yeah, no shit. Yeah, we get it. You're trying to win. But what does win stand for? It's an acronym. What's important now? So if they make a mistake, or if they have a successful play and, the team gets too high on themselves, they're prone to mistakes typically. Yeah. So he's like, okay, awesome play. Good job, team. Now, what's important now? Next play.
How much, you're able to learn and pull from all of those coaches. So you're mentioning a basketball coach, you're mentioning a football coach, you're talking about, culture, attracting the right people. When you were mentioning that, I was thinking of the guy at UConn, Gino, what's his name? Aromia?
Is the women's basketball or the men's
Yeah,
basketball?
women's basketball. Our friend Andrea Hootie's there. I would
Uh-huh.
love to. She must be in her awe working with him. There's a video of him talking about, he's at a press conference and it's like his best player. And she's like one of the best players in the country. And they're like, why didn't you put so-and-so in? He goes, because she's a baby. And he's like, she's pouting. She had a bad attitude. She's like, I don't care how, he goes, I don't care how good you are. You have that attitude, you won't ever play. He goes, you won't play ever. That's what he says, ever. And he goes, I'd rather lose than allow a player with a bad attitude go in. And now I'm sending the message of like, you could be my best player and I'll let you slide on behavior. And I got to tell you, I've experienced that. Like at our school, at the high school, it's not mandatory to lift with me. And so some kids, when it's time to lift, they don't lift or they go to the trainer or they do their own thing. And to me, that's a sign of you saying a couple things. Number one, you're saying F you to your coach. You're saying F you to me, which maybe a little bit bothers me. But what bothers me is as a teenager, you can't find one thing to get better here. You're already so good that you only could go to your private coach. You can't train with your team because you do your own thing. What does that say about you as a teammate? And look, I remember what it's like to be 16, 17. I was not very coachable. I wasn't, this great teammate. But now I've learned if I could go back and do it all over again, I would sit and talk with my coaches and listen. I would help other kids more. I was very tunnel vision. I wasn't really too friendly with the other kids on the team, but I would, go, but nobody gave me any context. Like I said, they would be like, get tough, do this. Today, as coaches, we're constantly talking to kids. So I'm always intrigued with like, okay, you're 16, you're 17, you're 18. Like there's nothing I could do for you in this weight room. So you'll just never show up. You're too good. What is that? You can't do one set of pull-ups. You can't come in and be you can't like you've maxed out. You can't come in and do some extra lunges or band work. And to me, that is fatal because how are you going to college where everything is controlled, right? You can't keep saying, I have my own coach.
Transfer portal, Zach.
And dude, I know you guys were mentioning this. I've been out of Division I coaching for a bit, 2014, 2015, Lehigh, 2017, 2018, Rutgers. A lot of kids quit. I'd say at least one a month. And a lot of kids transfer out. And look, I get it. In wrestling, sometimes sometimes the guy ahead of you is the best guy in the country. And you're probably not going to start. But it's real shocking at how people will everything is just like, I'll quit. And even in high school, supposedly they said this kid was like the second best kid on the team. He quit because he didn't like something the coach did, or he was going to have to go a different weight class. So he just quit. He gave up a sport that he had done for half his life that he was really damn good at. And it's like, that's the answer. And what if now I'm going to take that and apply it to my life? I had an argument with my wife. I quit. My kids didn't listen to me today. I quit. I had a bad meal and now I quit. Now I'm going to go all bad meals, or anything like everything is just so much quitting. You need some grit, some durability. And, to me, more so than ever, strength and conditioning is just a vehicle to teach about life. Not that I'm some master and have it all figured out and I've got this great life, but I've been through a lot of tough times. And if it wasn't for the training and my coaches, and now I apply the lessons from my coaches in high school. I apply them now, you know, not just, not just because it works, but also out of respect for them. They put a lot of time into me, and I still speak to one of my old coaches, and I try to just make him proud, because he put a lot of work into me, and I wasn't ready. I wasn't coachable, and they were ahead of their time. One of our coaches was showing us plyometrics, and I remember I was like, that's fucking stupid. Listen, I look back, I'm like, what an idiot I was, like straight up loser. But our coaches were ahead of their time. They were very intense. I wasn't ready to kind of be, it was just over my head, but I never quit. I didn't think that was an option. And today it's a constant option. And if you don't quit, somebody could complain and get their way. And I have this conversation with my son. Look, you don't like where you are in the lineup? Hit it out of the park. That'll solve a lot of problems. You're not hitting good? Who's stopping you from hitting outside? There's a batting tee. You don't feel you're fast enough? Am I stopping you from running sprints outside? I'm not stopping you. You have all the opportunity in the world. And so a lot of times people are exactly where they want to be, and usually where they need to be. Certainly there's some, wiggle room to that, right? But, look at your lacrosse team, Tex. The best guy is not accidentally the best guy. Neither is the worst guy. He's not by accident weak or by accident slow. Yeah, there's genetics and whatnot, but what is it that Dan John says, and John's spoken about, you guys have spoken about it. You have your genetics, geography, and environment, right?
Well, yeah, Dan John's genetics,
yes,
geography, and then John comments and adds opportunity.
Yes. And perfect example. I didn't take advantage of the opportunity in high school, or when we shared the story about Andre making me cry. Opportunity to learn weightlifting at age 13 could have completely changed my life, but I blew it. And so, genetics, geography, opportunity. And I always say opportunity is always knocking, but some of you refuse to answer the door.
Ooh.
Boom.
That's what we got to end on. I love it.
That's it, my bro.
All right, Zach, dude, thank you very much. I know we talked about a 60-minute. We were able to roll this into 2 hours. That's what happens, dude. Just imagine when we're stuck hanging out with each other for 2 days at Summer Strong.
Yeah.
What this is going to be.
So we're staying in Lake Murray. I'm flying down, and my buddy rented a Airbnb in Lake Murray. It's like 190 something bucks a night. I'm not sure where you guys are staying, but Lake Murray.
12 minutes away. So
cool. I think we might be a little further than that, but I'm excited.
Where can people go if they want to learn more from you?
Go to zachstrength.com. That's my free newsletter. I've been like kind of on and off social media. Sometimes I get so sick of it, I just kind of delete it. But there's a ton of stuff. There's, I think, like 5,000 YouTube videos, and the Iron Roots playlist is on my YouTube channel.
And check that out. And if you're looking for mentorship and an opportunity to intern, you got Underground Strength Gym up in, are you still Manasquan?
Manasquan, which is Central Jersey. So I need interns because eventually I want people, coaching. I'm not coaching as much as I used to because I'm at the high school, and I don't like missing my kids' sporting events.
Yes. And if you need a virtual mentor, you got Zach as well, and Power Athlete Academy. Don't sleep on that.
We're the ultimate, marry us together. We're the ultimate.
Zach, you're taken. All right. Thank you, Power Athlete Nation. Bye.